Early one Sunday morning in 2019, Jair Solis heard pounding on the door of his family's apartment in Los Angeles. Jair was only 15, but he knew what to do.
My first instinct was to ask, who is it? And they just kept saying, police, police. And they're like, we're here they said my dad's full legal name, right? And like, the first thing I tell them was like, do you guys have a warrant?
Jair knew what to say because he was in a high school club where he learned that his parents, who were undocumented at the time, had the legal right to refuse entry to immigration agents without a warrant. When it was clear Jair wouldn't open the door, the agents left. But before school the following Tuesday, his mom woke him up in a panic. They had detained his father as he drove to work.
This was like at 5:45 in the morning, like 6 in the morning. I was waking up by my mom, like crying, like tears dripping down on me. And I was just in a state of like just shock. The first person I called was my high school teacher.
This is Education Beat, getting to the heart of California schools. I'm guest host Betty Márquez Rosales. This week, how a father's detention shaped his son's educational career. Jair Solis became his family's first ever college graduate this weekend. It's a milestone that had long felt out of reach because of the long-lasting fallout from his dad's detention in an immigration facility. 7 years later, with the return of the federal administration that once detained his father, he's just now confronting how much the ordeal changed his and his family's life. Under the current Trump administration, more than 100,000 children, most of them U.S. citizens, have had parents detained or deported, according to a recent analysis by the Brookings Institute. So I interviewed Jair about his experience to understand the way it shaped his life and his education, and how his high school, Academia Avance Charter School, helped him navigate it. Why was the school the first call that you made? It could have been a family member, right? Like, why was that the first reaction you had?
I had no other trusted source, and this teacher, like, since the beginning of 9th grade, she always kind of like helped me out in any difficult thing I had, or whether it was like getting by a class or just like motivating me to just do good in school. And like, she would just like always actively be engaged in my life, you know, and like she would know my parents, she knew them, always ask about them. And like, she was my teacher, but I saw her more than a teacher, like someone who I could trust in personal matters. And I just felt like she would know what to do. So I called her and I told her that they picked my dad up, and like she told me to go to school and we'll figure it out.
So your dad was in detention for a month and he was later released with the help of attorneys. In what ways did that detention end up affecting you and your family?
Yeah, so my dad was like the main breadwinner of the family. So like he would pay rent and stuff. And at this time, I recall getting like a really good job. He got a promotion and they gave him like a company car. Everything was starting to do better. And then like within that day, like everything was just stripped from us. Like when he was detained, his job didn't want to give us his last paycheck. They fired him. They went to go take the truck. We had to sell our own car just because of the thought of lawyer fees. In general, just not knowing what was going to happen. Like every day was literally a mystery. I didn't know if he was going to get deported or like, you know, that first day we were trying to figure out where he was and we didn't find out until the next day. The school year was about to be over and I just couldn't focus on school. Luckily, that teacher like was still very supportive and understanding. In fact, all the teachers were. But outside of the classroom, I just felt like I had more assignments kind of like piling on top of me that I didn't want to like do, and just being there for my brothers and trying to figure it out.
There was a time during that month that your dad was detained where you spoke with your mom about leaving school to work because you wanted to help pay the bills. And you told me that she reacted with this look of hurt, of disappointment. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
She was the one who really motivated me and really pressed the issue of me not getting out of school. She didn't want me to struggle, like how my dad and she did, like not being able to go to school. She knows the importance of education and how it can take you places and what you could do with that.
Your mom had to actually stop her own education, right? I did end up speaking with her, and she mentioned she went about 3 years, I believe, to LA Community College for child development.
Yeah. So my mom did want to become a teacher, but like at the time, she didn't have like a lot of support from her family, and like things were getting really hard, and she was scared about like not having papers, so she just stopped going. But I know how much my mom really likes working with kids, and like the type of job she has now. My mom takes care of kids with special needs and people with special needs, so like a wide age gap. But having that patience, having that will to just do that job and have like not getting paid much, but just having that big heart and helping others and helping someone else's life to be a little easier despite any condition they have, has like helped me out in just being a better person in my career, I guess, and in my life. So yeah, and knowing that my mom wanted to get a higher education, but she couldn't because she was limited and she didn't meet certain requirements, or she didn't have what someone else had. That also inspired me because like, hopefully, one day I can help her get back into school and finish that, because I know she probably still needs a little bit of credits, but I want to let her know that like nothing is impossible, and like with some support, it can be done.
How did the detention change you?
So before, like, this is the time where you started seeing random ICE raids happen around the city. And in fact, we had another student at my school whose like parent got picked up not even a mile away from our campus, right? Like it was like around the corner from our middle school campus. So seeing that happening to one of my classmates and then seeing all this stuff on the news, like I never thought this could happen to me. Like I never thought like, oh, like I should be worried about this. These are people who are being targeted or planned out maybe ahead. Like I never really thought anything much about it. But once it happened to me, my whole like perspective of life really changed. We were definitely more cautious about people knocking on our door. A knock and a doorbell ring became very traumatic. Then just like, it made me feel very angry and like a lot of resent. But I made that into fuel for like my motivation to finish college, right? My motivation to continue to receive a higher education, knowing that my parents sacrificed a lot, and then still being seen as like these criminals, quote unquote, who need to be like removed from their homes and detained and processed, all that. Like it really inspired me and filled me with like, yeah, motivation to just do better for my family.
I know your dad eventually got a green card, and then in 2024, after you turned 21, you were legally able to petition for your mom, for her to apply for permanent residency. Can you tell me a bit about what that was like, especially after everything that happened with your dad?
Yeah, it was really stressful. And honestly, it was really a lot of pressure for me to do that. I was nervous about doing that because like everything that was going on with the ICE raids got really intense and everything kind of just went up a notch, right? Like everything that happened in Minnesota and all over the nation with just random pickups, random raids. And especially in LA, they were just going down like to well-known areas where Hispanics gather and just raiding them. And like my mom drives a lot for her work, so like I was just nervous about her being picked up too, and like having that constantly in the back of my mind of like, what if that happens? I was just praying every time and like that it went well. So it was like a really surreal feeling. And she called me crying as well, like happy and that I did it for her. But that's just the least I could do, you know, for everything she has done for my brothers and I. So it's something very like emotionally significant to us because now she can go back and see my grandma in Mexico, and like she hasn't been back in more than 30 years now. So it's a dream of hers. I'm happy that I fulfilled a dream of hers.
And then in your last semester, you interned in Washington, D.C. with CHIRLA, that's the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. You felt that everything in your life at that point was immigration related. Can you share a bit about why?
Yeah, so I was part of the policy and advocacy team. So I was doing a lot of memo briefings, going to congressional hearings and taking notes and reporting back to my supervisor. But basically when I was working with them, it was just a lot of like constant media reports on like what was happening with immigration, right? And so like in detention centers here in California, Adelanto, California City have the worst rates of medical crises. So like people needing medical attention, they're neglected, right? And the deaths happening in Adelanto, the refugee resettlement camps that hold majority minors, you know, kids who are separated from their parents, and kids are being held here and the parents are being transported to detention centers. So you hear about all the cruel things that's happening and like how much money ICE is getting for their budget, like Congress trying to appoint them more money from the reconciliation bill, and now like in a different appropriations, like seeing everything going on in Congress, seeing everything how it's playing out in the streets, it was just so much for me to handle, and like it would pick at this wound that was still trying to heal for me. So it really wasn't healing, but at the time, like it just felt like I was doing a good thing because I'm working for a good organization like CHIRLA. They do good stuff. Being that I could just help people out, like my family, like it made me complete.
You did eventually get to college. You went to UC Merced. You graduated on Saturday, just 2 days ago, right? How did that feel?
I felt really great. It felt like I was just so out of awe. I was trying to like take it in, but it was really like a great moment. I was like trying not to cry all morning, but it was like so hard, and felt really good seeing how happy my parents were and knowing that like I'm the first ever to graduate in my family. Like none of my cousins, none of my tias, none of my tios have a college degree. So being the first to have that.
What would you tell other students who are now in your shoes, who might be afraid that their parents might be detained or whose parents might be detained already? What would be that message to those students?
Just keep fighting and stay strong, not only for yourself, but for your family. Know where you come from and who you do it for. And just be engaged in the community, be engaged in what's going on around society and the world. That really helped me out as well. Like I said, I saw all these things going on the news, never really paid attention to it. But once it happens to you, you really want to pay attention to it now. So that was my wake-up call. And I want to say, like, yeah, just whatever you do, like, do it with care, do it with love, and do it with, like, actual genuine effort. Then, you know, if you don't know what to do, ask a teacher, ask one of your teachers at school. Like, they can help you out so much. The school felt like a second home. You're there throughout most of the day. I really learned to trust that, and being in that environment really helped me out a lot.
What are your plans now for the future?
I ultimately do want to go to law school. I do want to be a lawyer. I'm really set on that.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jair.
I appreciate you guys for taking your time out and being here and listening to my story.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Education Beat, Getting to the Heart of California Schools, a production of EdSource. You can find a link to my story about Jair in our podcast notes and at edsource.org. Our producer is Coby McDonald. Special thanks to our guest, Jair Solis. Thanks also to Zadie Stavely and editor-at-large John Fensterwald. Our theme music is from Blue Dot Sessions. This episode was brought to you by the Sobrato Family Foundation. I'm Betty Márquez Rosales. Host Zadie Stavely will be back next week. And subscribe so you won't miss an episode.